congressional investigation.
Very serious charge. How far that goes and how it implicates anybody else is yet to be determined.
It definitely feels like there's an accelerating pace now.
Mr. Cohen, how are you feeling?
Michael Cohen is lying, and he's trying to get a reduced sentence for things that have nothing to do with me.
Fox on top of a Russia probe turning upside down. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. Glad to have you. And the man who used to be called the president's fixer just might have his old boss in a fix. Michael Cohen cutting a plea deal with special counsel Robert Mueller, pleading guilty today to lying to Congress about then-candidate Donald Trump's efforts to close a real estate deal during the 2016 presidential campaign. Never mind a so-called Moscow Trump Tower never came to be. This latest turn in the Mueller probe has some wondering whether this investigation will ever come to an end. What a world. Your world, and we are all over it. With Rick Leventhal in New York on Michael Cohen's plea deal, and Kristen Fisher in Washington on the closed-door hearing that some say sparked this deal. We go first outside the New York Federal Courthouse, where Rick Leventhal is taking it all in. Rick.
And Neil, when we first got the tip early this morning to head down to this courthouse, we were told simply it was USA versus John Doe. Well, John Doe turned out to be Michael Cohen, who apparently spoke to Mueller's investigators for some 70 hours, which led up to the guilty plea entered in court here this morning. One count for lying to the Senate Special Committee on Intelligence in a letter and at a hearing back in August 2017 regarding the timeline of his and then candidate Trump's interactions on a potential real estate deal in Russia. Cohen told Congress that all discussions with Russia about a Trump Tower in Moscow ended in January of 2016 before the Iowa caucuses and Republican primaries. But today he told the judge he lied, claiming the discussions actually lasted until June 2016 and that he had more talks with President Trump when he was still a candidate than previously admitted. Cohen also says that he lied to Congress to keep up with the political messaging and out of loyalty. Cohen also admitted lying to another judge when pleading guilty to other charges back in August. And while his attorney says he's simply doing the right thing now, the president says Cohen is still a liar.
If Cohen is such a bum, why did you hire him, have him on your payroll for 12 years, and have him do so much of your dirty work?
Because a long time ago, he did me a favor. A long time ago, he did me a favor.
Cohen faces up to 5 years in prison on this charge. He's due back in court on December 12th when he's also expected to face a sentence on the other charges that he pled guilty to back in August, Neil.
Incredible. All right, Rick, thank you very much. In the meantime, Michael Cohen's plea deal stemming actually from a closed-door hearing with the Senate Intelligence Committee back in October of last year. Kristen Fisher in Washington, D.C. with the latest on that. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, Neil. Well, President Trump and his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, say that Michael Cohen is lying to try to get a reduced sentence. But it's pretty clear that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, believes he's telling the truth. Otherwise, he wouldn't have offered him this new plea deal, which is his second plea deal in just 4 months. Well, today he pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about the timing and the president's personal involvement in that Trump Tower real estate project in Russia. The timing is really critical here because Cohen is now saying that this project was actively being discussed with the president's knowledge throughout most of the 2016 campaign, that it had not stopped before the Iowa caucuses, which is what he told Congress. Now, again, the president says Cohen is lying, but he also said this as he was leaving the White House. Listen.
Even if he was right, it doesn't matter because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign. I was running my business, a lot of different things during the campaign.
The top Democrat on one of the committees that Cohen has admitted to lying to, Senator Mark Warner, he says he now wants Cohen to come back and testify again, and this time tell the truth.
Just remarkable that you had the president's personal lawyer still dealing on a Trump Tower project through the whole campaign, and it appears even into 2017.
Now, remember, this is all coming just 1 week after President Trump submitted his written answers to the special counsel's office. But Rudy Giuliani says he's confident that there are no contradictions between what Cohen said today and what the president said in those answers, Neil.
All right, Kristen, thank you very, very much. Let's get the read on all of this from former federal prosecutor John Lara. John, already we're hearing folks say at the very least it means this thing drags on a while, does it?
It does, but I have a completely different read on it. I was shocked by how inconsequential this charge is. It has nothing to do with Russian collusion, nothing to do with people in the campaign aware of things going wrong with Russia. In fact, this is the equivalent of jaywalking under a federal statute, a federal prosecution. So I'm quite shocked at how little Mueller has. One other thing that's worth mentioning, under Department of Justice policy, you have to plead to the most serious charge that the government is aware of. If Mueller had the goods on something in the campaign linking Cohen to some kind of Russian involvement, then he would have had to plead guilty to that. The fact that he did not, and he simply pled guilty to lying to Congress, says a lot, mostly about what Mueller does not have in the investigation.
It's a very good point, because what also is revealed here is this so-called Trump Tower that was going to be built in Moscow never was. Getting Donald Trump to go to Moscow to try to close the deal with Cohen never happened. So it would appear at just a surface level that there's no there. But am I missing something?
No, in fact, that's what I was shocked about. And you know, in the business world, Neil, these are very complicated transactions. In fact, nothing ever happened with the tower. There was only an initial letter of intent discussing the possibility of a deal. There were no contracts signed, no property identified, no marketing agreements, nothing. So really what Cohen lied about was a big zero. The conduct itself underlying what was going on is not illegal. The fact that Trump, as a private citizen running for president, wanted to build a tower in Russia is not illegal. The fact that Cohen lied about it to Congress is incomprehensible to me. Maybe he thought he was acting out of some loyalty to Trump, apparently, but once again, it has nothing to do with Russian interference in the election. Now, people are going to make a big deal out of it because it's Michael Cohen, but in terms of what the special prosecutor is charged with, looking at Russian interference in the election, this is a big fat zero. In fact, what it tells me is that he doesn't have any substantive information implicating anyone at a high level in criminal activity linked to the Russians.
All right, that we don't know for sure, but we do know that what the media was certainly pouncing on today was that there was talk of this Moscow real estate deal that was in the winter of 2016. Maybe around January was the latest it was. And then the revelation here is that he might have, that is, Cohen misrepresented this, that it carried on until June of 2016. There again, I'm saying, okay, is that a smoking gun?
Well, first of all, there's nothing illegal about it. He literally lied about something that was not problematic from a criminal law standpoint. Now, maybe from a political standpoint, you know, Cohen didn't want that revealed. Maybe he felt it would have been embarrassing to the president. But there's nothing in his plea agreement.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear. This is my idiocy here. But is it, what am I missing? All right, so if he misrepresented the fact that these discussions started or were going on in early 2016, and he misrepresented that to say they were still going on in June 2016, who cares?
Well, that's the point. The only reason that it's a problem for him is that apparently he misstated the facts to Congress. So therein lies the criminal charge. But again, you're coming back to my point, Neil. This is the equivalent of jaywalking, because the underlying charge, it really doesn't relate to anything that's illegal or against the law. The fact that Donald Trump, as a candidate, was pursuing an interest in a tower in Russia is not against the law.
Well, you know, you're right about that, but already a number of Democrats have seized on, including former Clinton Chief of Staff Leon Panetta, that he was more interested, that is, Donald Trump at the time, closing business deals and enriching himself, I'm paraphrasing and very crudely, than running for president. You say?
Well, yeah, and that's not against any criminal violation. Once again, you know, maybe that's an embarrassment politically, but there's nothing wrong with that from a criminal standpoint under the federal statutes.
All right. It's confusing, that's for sure. John, thank you very much for taking the time here. We do know that the back and forth on Russia continues, and if this is a president who is suddenly beholden to the Russians and trying not to offend them, then the president violated that big time today by canceling a meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Kids get a fun-filled package each month designed to inspire curiosity in geography, world cultures, or science. Order today at littlepassports.com.
Must be 18 years or older to order.
All right, this was a little weird because while the president was taking questions from reporters before boarding Marine One heading out to Argentina, it looked like a meeting was still on with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He gets on the plane. A few minutes later, we're told the meeting is off. Kevin Cork is in Buenos Aires with the very latest. What happened, Kevin?
Well, basically what happened, Neil, was the president had a bit of a conversation with his Secretary of State, his National Security Advisor, and his Chief of Staff. Listen, after he talked to him, he decided by himself, I don't want to do it, not going to do it for now at least. And so the president made the decision while aboard Air Force One to scrub the scheduled meeting with Vladimir Putin, at least for now. And I emphasize for now because, as you well know in covering these events, Neil's subject to change at any given time. Let me take it to Twitter, share just a bit of what the president had to say about it online. In fact, while he was aboard Air Force One, we had a chance to take a look at the tweet, and the president was making it clear that, yep, this meeting is, at least for the time being, off the books. He's talking in particular about what he observed happening between the Russians and the Ukrainians. I believe we may have that tweet. Let me share just a bit of what I have here on my phone. It says, based on the fact that the ships and the sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I've decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin. I look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as this situation is resolved. The Kremlin's recent attack on and seizure of Ukrainian vessels in the Sea of Azov, prompting leaders in Ukraine to go so far, Neil, as to ask for assistance from NATO, imploring the organization to deploy warships to patrol the region where the Russians seized both vessels and sailors alike. Now, here's Russia's response. We can share this. This is from a spokesman to TASS. So far, we have only seen the tweet and in the media. We have no official information. If this is so, meaning if the meeting is in fact scrubbed, the president, Putin in this case, will have a couple additional hours on the program for useful meetings on the sidelines of the summit. By the way, I should point this out, Neil. Earlier today, we saw the president tweet about the fact that China is being hit with significant tariffs and how that is enriching the USA. But it's still the plan to have the leaders of the two largest economies in the world meet Saturday night. Be there. Aloha. China clearly hoping to end the trade dispute, but the president, at least for now, seems content to let it all play out slowly.
I really don't know, but I will tell you that I think China wants to make a deal. I'm open to making a deal, but frankly, I like the deal we have right now.
All that plus, we will look forward to trying to find out what happens with the Brexit vote and what that might do for the world economy and the standing of British Prime Minister Theresa May. And I want to add this last thing before I let you go. We have received word that German Chancellor Angela Merkel's aircraft has landed in Cologne. She was en route here to the G20. Apparently a mechanical problem, not known if she will continue that flight. Neil, back to you.
All right, thank you, buddy, very, very much. So let's go to former USS Cole Commander Kirk Lippold on all of this. You know, Commander, in light of the Russian back and forth and then the Cohen situation today and whether the president misrepresented his ties to Russia, he would certainly have a funny way of showing this beholdenness that's out there to Russia when he cancels a meeting with the president only hours before a big summit. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's exactly the right signal. I think when the national security team got together, they briefed the president. Clearly, he made the decision that what Russia did was in violation of international law. Therefore, why aid and abet it? Cancel the meeting. There's always an opportunity to reschedule it. The snide little comment that came out from the Russian Foreign Ministry that they will have useful meetings, well, that just indicates that this wasn't being taken seriously by the Russians to begin with. So good call by the president.
All right, as a security guy who deals with the foreign elements and nefarious elements of that, and you see all the charges that have gone back and forth, and whether the president or then candidate Donald Trump had close ties with the Russians, do you see anything in Donald Trump's behavior since becoming president, regardless of these charges, whether true or not, that would hint of someone beholden to the Russians and Vladimir Putin and trying not to offend them?
Actions speak stronger than words. And what President Trump has done since taking office with respect to the Russians and their behavior throughout the world clearly is indicative that he is not only not beholden, but in fact is going to hold President Putin and his regime to account for nerve gas attacks, for invading foreign countries and seizing territory, and these actions now at sea with the Ukrainians.
So let me get a sense of what happens at this G20 summit. Of course, if he doesn't have a sit down with Vladimir Putin, he does with the leader of China, and he is still talking tough on trade. In fact, with his very tough talking trade advisor, Peter Navarro, who will not suffer fools or lies gladly. This could be a pretty rough summit.
It could be, Neil, but I think what you're looking for is a president for the first time, while they may not like the language that he uses to get it across, is clearly saying that the United States is going to look at our national security interests first and foremost. And he's going to look at that across the full instruments of national power. He is going to take care of our economy. He is going to work it diplomatically in the meetings that he holds. He is going to look at how we convey that to the press and what's being done. Action speaks stronger than words, and the president's been very clear. He is looking out for our national security interests. And when you look at it, Europe, it's on their back doorstep in what just happened off the Crimea and the Sea of Azov. Quite frankly, the Europeans continue to aid and abet Putin by allowing the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to be done, by letting energy get into Eastern Europe, by Germany being beholden to the energy requirements that are tied to Russia. This clearly is a European issue that the United States is once again having to lead because the Europeans aren't demonstrating the necessary fortitude or backbone to demonstrate that they will not tolerate Russia misbehaving in the international community.
I get it on the Russia thing. It just doesn't jibe with how the president has been dealing with this whole Saudi Arabia thing. It was to the point where the Senate overwhelmingly sends him a message, 63 to 37, to say, we're not going to support Saudi Arabia in this Yemen war. We don't think you should either. So isn't that inconsistent?
I think what you're seeing is that Congress is, in fact, exercising what they're supposed to do. They authorize and they appropriate. That's the money that comes, and when the president has a foreign policy objective that he wants to do, and Congress doesn't want to allow him to do it, this is how they exercise their
Well, they say that at least
government.
it's some response because they fear from him, Commander, no response, and it bothers them.
Well, I think they are seeing it, but I think you have to look at it again. From when I was on the program, when this killing of Khashoggi first happened, what you're looking at is the larger strategic interests of the United States playing out. While President Trump is very concerned, I'm sure, with how Saudi Arabia handled this entire issue, we have to look at Yemen, and it needs to be resolved. That country is suffering through a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and we in fact have to help the Saudis and the region by making sure that Iran understands there's a cost for their continued involvement in that war as well.
All right, Commander, always good seeing you, my friend. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Neil.
Before I want to teach something, I do want to give you a quick look at the markets today. Remember yesterday's better than 600-point run-up? We gave back only about 27.5 points of that. Now, a lot of this with markets on tenterhooks waiting to see a trade deal that could go in their favor and complete what has been relief over the interest rate situation, followed by potential relief over what's happening on the trade front. We shall see. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is going to be sending, among others, some marshals to the border. Marshals typically look for criminals. So what's going to happen now?
This program is brought to you by Ford.
Build on this would come and is in order here from Tucson, Arizona Border Patrol Chief Rodolfo Carish. Rodolfo, very good to have you. What will these marshals do? I guess we're going to have close to 36 of them. What are they assigned to do?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Neil. The marshals are there is to support CBP efforts down on the border and providing border security. They're there to augment the resources that we currently have in place.
Okay, so, you know, a lot of people are focusing, we had the dust up at the border and the caravan acting ugly and then the tear gas and all of that. But I was surprised, and you know this better than I, that incidents like these are way down from what they were just 4 or 5 years ago, but people don't know that. Can you explain now versus when this was much more heated and much angrier back in the Obama administration?
Well, I mean, first you have to understand that this is not a new dynamic on the border. I mean, we've had influxes in illegal immigration over the years, and if you look at where we're at now, is across the border, even prior to the caravan arriving, up 90% on the southwest border, 30% here in Tucson alone. Yeah. So we're contending with the traffic that's coming across, in addition to the drugs that are coming northbound, and also the weapons that are being shipped into Mexico.
And what's interesting, this gets a lot of attention, especially in the Tijuana, San Diego area, the very populated area, a lot of cameras, a lot of attention there. But the fact of the matter is the use of firearms and all of that is way down from what it had been, no matter what region you're talking about. So what is going on here? What's really an accurate read of violence at the border or the use of firearms or more at the border?
Well, first of all, it's been an increase in the deployment of CBP resources that we've had down here, but it's also the close collaboration that we've had with Mexican government is to ensure that we have a tranquil and peaceful border. At the end of the day, you're going to have influxes of groups of people who come up here for nefarious acts, but at the end of the day, I think it's a combined effort of not only U.S. forces, Mexican agencies, and also state and local agencies who partner with us every day is to support us in the border security environment.
So when we make a big deal of tear gas being used, and yet there were, in 2013, there were 1,168 incidents of tear gas and related incidents as well, 151 of pepper spray. This is back in 2013. These numbers, these incidents are in the single digits by comparison, right?
Yes, our agents use tremendous restraint in utilizing tear gas, pepper spray, or any intermediate force tool that they have available to them. But at the end of the day, it's as much as about protecting our officers and agents who are deployed down there. I think there's been a lot made of the fact is that you had the use of tear gas that was used down there, but you have to recognize that it was used for people who were actively assaulting our agents and officers in areas. They had an opportunity to present themselves peacefully at a port of entry, is to claim asylum, but yet chose to rush and try to breach the border.
Yeah, when I see these statistics, I think your guys are due a break and at least a clarification of that. So thank you, sir, for doing that. And again, these statistics, again, are what they are. In the budget year of 2013, we had firearms used 45 times, and over the 11 months in that period, 743 cases of agents and officers using less lethal force, batons, stun guns, tear gas, pepper spray. That is now in the single digits today. It is way down today. So the incidents are still out there, whether you like them or not. They're still out there, but they're much fewer and further between. We'll have much more to this.
Applebee's Bigger Bolder Grill combos are back. Now that's eating good in the neighborhood.
Do you have any idea how your mattress affects your body and how well you sleep? Is it too hard or too soft?
A very crowded field of presidential hopefuls. Here's what he told TMZ.
Seriously weighing a run for president?
Always am. The Greenies have shown interest. The Green Party. I'll go to Mexico now and for a couple months coming up, and that's where I'll make the ultimate decision when I get down there and clear my head out of whether to do it or not. But there's a lot of factors that'll come into play. See, I don't want to run and elect Trump.
All right. The irony there is that his run for Minnesota governor, which came out of the blue, stunned Donald Trump so much that, again, legend has it that it inspired Donald Trump to say, you know, maybe I could do that for another office. Who knows? Wall Street Journal's Jillian Melcher is here, GOP fundraiser and strategist Noel Nickpour, and Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. All right, so, Antoine, you got a crowded field, likely, and it's going to be a very diverse cast of characters. What do you think?
I think it's great. Look, I think the crowded field made Barack Obama a very strong candidate in the 2016 2008 general
There
election.
was nothing crowded like this.
I know, but listen, competition is good for the marketplace. But there's two things I want to tell you about
This is Radio City Music.
Let me tell you two things about the 2020 election. Anyone who is flirting with the idea of running knows that the road to the White House and heaven has to be stamped in South Carolina. So South Carolina will be very important. Hence Antoine C. Wright. They also know that, here's what I've learned from doing this business, Neil. I've learned that leaders do not create movements. Movements create leaders. I think the 2018 election for Democrats was a movement. And so we're going to see the birth of a lot of new leaders who will pop their head in the presidential cycle.
And
it's good for the country.
I think it creates opportunity for a wild card. And I was looking at the Morning Consult poll. And the two top picks right now are Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. So I think that's the blue-collar vote that Trump swung, and then the millennial vote that Trump lost out of. But one of the really interesting things was their supporters kind of slipped on the end. But if you went further down the ticket than that, it was all over the place. So I think that what that tells me
they haven't come to South Carolina.
Again, opportunity for a wild card.
Well, but one of the things that I think that you're going to see in this large field, potentially large field for 2020 for the Democrats, I think that whoever wins that nomination, you're going to see what direction their message is going to be. Because right now they have a progressive message, they have a moderate message. Let's see which one prevails, because that's going to dictate where exactly the Democratic Party is going to go.
Have debates, like, you know, with Fox and Fox Business did debates, and we had the adult debate and then the kids debate. It was called, was disparaged that way. And that was for a field of, 12 to 16 Republican
We're going to have 20 to 21. Easy. But Neil,
I had a guy earlier on saying it could be 36 to 38.
Serious candidates. I think we'll have 18 to 21. But here's what people do not understand who have never done presidential elections. 60% of the people who will cast their vote in the Democratic primary, starting with South Carolina, will be African American. Super Tuesday, that number increases even more. So whoever our nominee is will be the person who will dominate the South. And let me tell you what's going to be key for who dominates the South.
So one person would have to break out of that couple of dozen pack.
They're going to have to break. And I'm telling you, South Carolina usually determines our nominee. But let me tell you what's going to determine.
But you're going to have to look at their messages. Like Howard Schultz is already putting together a deal, and he is focusing on the national debt.
I think you're right on that. I mean, this is an interesting moment.
Are you worried that it's too crowded, though? They're going to cancel each other out.
I'm not at all. I think it's good, because I think we have to get to the place in our party where we have a messenger and a message.
Well, for the Republicans dealing with Donald Trump, was that he effectively divided a crowd that thought he would sort of, flame out, and he didn't. Who on the Democratic side has the potential to catch on?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is, in the same way that the last election had the opportunity to change what the Republican Party is, this is going to be a moment of reckoning for the Democratic Party. I think there's potential for a real progressive wing to emerge. I'd be keeping an eye on Kamala Harris. I wouldn't rule out Elizabeth Warren.
Well, isn't California, they front-loaded their primary?
Cory Booker,
right? That's going to be tough for South Carolina to deal with that.
It will not, because South Carolina is a high-tech...
there are 49 other states.
I do know that, but I'm telling you what's important. South Carolina is a high-tech, high-touch. California is all the air-ground state.
All right,
so whoever has
that's
money...
a lot of delegates.
Whoever has money... California will be split, because if Ms. Harris runs, if Mayor Garcetti runs, and the congressman from California, they're going to split delegates. Not to mention other candidates have strong popularity in the state.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Somewhere you're going to have to get Bloomberg in the mix, because he is not only a major self-funder, I think that he has got the potential to change and play with message, because when you have that much money, and this is going to be an all-time, big-time fundraising year for 2020.
The most expensive ever.
Right. You're going to have someone like a Michael Bloomberg on that side.
Most expensive.
But it's growing and growing and growing.
Because of the number
I think Michael Bloomberg worries Donald Trump.
I think he does
he's
too.
calling him Little Michael.
Because he never talks about any. He goes, I can beat Joe Biden, I can beat Warren, but he never really names Bloomberg.
But
I don't know. He's
how does
the
it
guy
work
with
if
the
you
soda
have
tax.
well, whatever. But if you have a crowded field, does that favor the incumbent in the other party, or because look at what happened to Trump?
Look, that's my worry as a Democrat. Our convention is up sooner. earlier than normal. We have a crowded field. There's no guarantee.
See, when I said the crowded field to you in the beginning, you dismissed it.
well, I had to think about it.
You kind of waved me off.
I had to think about it. But I worry that if we do not have a settled nominee, or if it's close by convention, we have a very divided convention.
Imagine that. You get to the convention, you don't have a nominee.
That could be trouble in the blue Democratic waters.
The Trump voter, too. Some of these were new voters that voted for Trump. They weren't traditional Republican donors.
Who's to say they're going to come back out?
And a lot of them were Bernie Sanders voters who were impressed with the populist message.
That's true. A lot of Bernie Sanders, a lot of Joe Biden.
Yeah. A lot of people who weren't all from South Carolina.
The number one,
Pennsylvania.
whoever the top and whoever the number two will have to be two people who can bring the party together. I will tell you the most key ingredient to that success, and that is African American women. They have dominated the cycle.
I think women in general.
No, African American women in particular for Democrats.
African American women from South Carolina. Is what you
oh my God.
God's country.
God's country. It is a beautiful state. All right, when we come back here, do you like low oil prices? They bounce back a little today, but you know there's a flip side to that. If they get too low, you might not like it, even though you kind of like it at the pump. We'll explain after this.
The investment world is full of complex and expensive products.
Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy herself. And in the center seat, for the first time, Democrat strategist and former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton in South Carolina, Antoine Seawright. Great to have you on the noon program.
I feel really good. In the South, we don't say lucky, so I feel really blessed. I'm one blessed guy.
I love it. I love it. Is the seat comfortable?
It's very comfortable.
You're good.
You're not going to bless his heart?
Oh, yes. I was waiting for Antoine first.
Not yet.
All right, let's scoot to
Bless your heart.
Yeah. We begin with the big development in the Russia investigation. Michael Cohen pleading guilty in a Manhattan federal court today, this morning, for lying to Congress. The former personal attorney to the president admitted he made false statements to lawmakers about a plan to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Cohen's plea, his second in the past 4 months, comes as part of a new deal with special counsel Robert Mueller in the probe of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. The top Democrat on Senate Intel had this reaction to Cohen's guilty plea.
There seems to be a trend here amongst so many of the president's closest allies that they don't tell the truth. It also is just one more reinforcing indication why the Mueller investigation has to be allowed to continue unimpeded.
And this happened. President Trump ripped into his former attorney and confidant just before leaving the White House for the G20 in Argentina. Watch it.
He's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. So he's lying very simply to get a reduced sentence.
There is a lot to scoop up in just the last half hour. Let's go to Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge in Washington. Catherine?
Thanks, Harris. Earlier today, we obtained this draft prepared by Cohen's attorneys for Congress in 2017 about the Moscow project. This is at the heart of today's court action, where Cohen said he lied to congressional investigators about the Moscow proposal. As Cohen left a New York court earlier today, he did not stop to take reporters' questions. In the draft for Congress, Cohen said negotiations over the Moscow project ended in January of 2016, but he told the New York court today it was in fact June of 2016. In the draft, Cohen said discussion of attempted travel to Moscow was limited, that he never discussed it with then candidate Trump, but he told the New York court today the discussions were in fact more extensive. A short time ago on Capitol Hill, the chairman and again the ranking Democrat of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who got this testimony from Cohen in the first place, reacted.
I'm not going to comment upon the commentary that this individual made before our committee. We've kept that confidential, but obviously Mr. Cohen was one of the witnesses that we've always wanted to have come back, and that need goes up.
I haven't seen the specific indictment or the plea, but this is a reason people shouldn't lie when they're in front of a congressional investigation.
In court, Cohen said that he made the statement to Congress to keep up with political messaging and out of loyalty to then candidate Trump. A source close to the Trump legal team questioned how the change in the timing or the breadth of discussions about possible travel to Moscow are material to a crime of collusion with Russia, emphasizing that this deal never came through. That was also a point that the president picked up a short time ago.
Even if he was right, it doesn't matter, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign. I was running my business, a lot of different things during the campaign. So very simply, Michael Cohen is lying, and he's trying to get a reduced sentence for things that have nothing to do with me.
What we don't know is the specifics of the detail that Cohen has now provided to the special counsel about this real estate project, as well as the extent of the discussions he had with then candidate Trump. So there's still a lot of unknowns, but at least we can see what the basis was for the lying to federal investigators or to Congress with Cohen earlier today.
Catherine, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's bring it out to the couch. Antoine, where do you put all of this in what we know? A lot of people say, oh, it feels like things are kind of wrapping up. What do you think?
Well, I think it's premature for anyone to speculate where this is going, the direction or the speed. But what I do know is that the president once again did what we know he always does, and that's lied about any association he may have had or have with Russia. So I would couch this as another page in the catalog of lies by the president. It's very unfortunate for, I think, his camp that his personal attorney, his most trusted legal advisor, is now going down in flames. And, you know, I'm from South Carolina, and we like to say there's no interest like self-interest. So I just have to believe that Cohen is going to do everything he can to protect himself through all this, and that means tell the truth.
So you believe Michael Cohen, who has lied about other things, talking about the president and being a witness? Because I just want an answer to that first, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, why would he have to lie at this point? I mean, look,
Okay, so there are different points that you believe somebody who has a history of lying.
No, I never doubted any of what he knew and did not know. What I'm saying is, at this point, he is pretty much on his way, could be on his way to jail. So he has no reason to lie. He has no reason to not do anything but cooperate and tell the truth and tell what he knows.
Where do you get from this that the president lied, though? Let me push back on the first thing that you said, because we're saying that Cohen was mistaken or misreported or lied about the dates when he had these conversations when they were doing the deal and about who may or may not travel. That's him lying. How do you get from that
during
the
the course of the
lied?
campaign, what we heard from Donald Trump was that he had no interest in Russia, he had no business interests, etc. We heard that many times along the campaign trail, and now here we know that they were trying to do some business deals in Moscow. Whether it went through or not, there was an attempt, and that's why you heard.
This was already known, though.
But no, we did not know this. But here's what we do know: we know that Democrats have beat the drum for a very long time about tax returns. And so this is why we have to dig a little further and find these things out, because what we don't know.
Sure. Well, Michael Cohen has every reason to lie because he's trying to strike a plea deal to save himself, and he's not a credible witness because he just admitted that he has already lied. Further, my understanding is that President Trump, or at least what we know that he's responded in the questions to Mueller, have been true, at least in what he has said previously publicly. Also, I think it's always, that's at least what we know of now, or at least what's been reported. I also think that it is important for people to give pause when we get new information about Russia. We've seen so many things be incorrect. One of the things is actually a narrative being run now about one of the things President Trump responded to regarding questions over the Ukraine platform change to the GOP. Byron York has a great write-up about this, of actually the platform was strengthened regarding Ukraine, and mentioned in there is one that we're going to respond to Russia the same way we did with the Soviet Union. Also talking about armed assistance to Ukraine. And guess what President Trump did as president? He actually reversed President Obama's policy of not providing lethal aid to Ukraine, and he provided that lethal aid to Ukraine. So President Trump's actually been stronger on Russia than President Obama ever was.
Let's think about this from a very logical standpoint.
Is it exactly what I just laid out?
Let's
Logic.
take the partisan politics out of it. Do you think
those
someone
are facts, Antoine? Facts are not partisan.
Who could be on his way to jail is going to continue to lie at this point? Like, let's just think about that.
100%. He's trying.
Maybe I'm on Pluto somewhere.
Well, no,
maybe sometimes I am.
We'll come back to planet Earth.
Here's why you would lie, because you have other witnesses and those who have been targets and subjects within this investigation who have said, you know, Mueller's team is putting a certain squeeze on us to say things in a particular way way for a particular outcome. And, you know, what they are implying is that they are kind of guided to lie or stretch the truth in a way that's more convenient to Mueller and the outcome that he wants. And that would be, you know, you would assume to shorten one's prison sentence. That's what Paul Manafort supposedly did when he entered a plea deal with Robert Mueller. And Mueller's team is now saying, well, he went back on his word. He's been lying about stuff. And, you know, Manafort, through his representation, has been saying, no, he was instructed to lie and he wouldn't do that. So it's all very confusing. It seems that Mueller has some very specific systems in place to get what he wants out of these people who are slippery to begin with. I will certainly give you that. But that doesn't mean that you can all of a sudden connect these dots that magically lead to Russia affecting the outcome of the 2016 campaign. Therefore, the president is going to be...
Let me jump in there just 1 second, Antoine, because I want to respond to something that Kennedy just said, which is interesting. So as of late, we've been hearing the president say that there were other people that the Mueller investigation or investigators could have talked with. Many more people who would have given, you know, a different perspective or more perspective or whatever. But the people who have been chosen are weak in what spot? It's exactly what Kennedy said. They're sloppy. They're shady. Let me finish. They have shadiness in their history, and with Paul Manafort, we have law breaking in his history. So those people are easier to put the squeeze on. They had been investigating Manafort for a very long time. Yet you extrapolate what you want from him. You extract it, you extrapolate it, and then you try to use it in another investigation. What does he do? He resists. And what does that do? On a federal level, the president potentially can pardon him. But what Cohen did this morning by saying he's guilty in a state court makes it more complicated.